Hi there, my name is Audrey, and today I'm 30 years old. I have a story to share about how I became a millionaire thanks to two greedy people. Let's just say karma always catches up to those who do wrong. I first met my husband Gavin during a work trip organized by our office. We were both heads of different departments in the company, but had never met before. On the trip, there were various activities including games and sports. I got hurt during a volleyball game and sprained my ankle. Gavin quickly helped me and carried me to the infirmary to get first aid. I thought he was very kind and wanted to get to know him better. When we got back from the trip, I reached out to him and asked if he'd like to go out for coffee. He agreed right away, and we set a date to meet at a local cafe. During the date, we talked about the trip, our interests, and our families. I realized that Gavin and I had similar tastes in sports, TV shows, and hobbies. Gavin told me he was very close to his mother, Meg, and visited her at least twice a week. He said, I've always been really close to my mother. We make it a point to see each other at least twice a week. I replied, that's sweet. I'm glad you have a good relationship with her. What about your father? Gavin's face changed and he said, well, he left us a few years ago, and we don't have much contact. I asked, is everything okay between you two? It's complicated, Audrey. Let's just say it didn't work out. What do you mean? He's your father, not your boyfriend. Yeah, but he wasn't very helpful, so my mom and I left. Not helpful how? Financially or emotionally? You know what, we have a lot of other things to talk about. Can we please move on? Oh, of course. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry. I just wanted to get to know you better. We can talk about something else. I didn't think much about it and figured it was just a sensitive topic for Gavin. I was sure he'd open up more as we got closer. After that day, we met up a few more times over the next few weeks, and even at work, I started having lunch with him daily. In a few months, we became very close and things got serious. I knew his birthday was coming up, so I decided to plan a surprise party for him. I got our friends to help with the planning and guest list. Since I knew how close Gavin was to Meg, I thought it made sense to invite her to the party too. I wasn't sure about inviting his father, so I decided not to, as I didn't want anything to ruin Gavin's birthday. The day of the party arrived, and I finished decorating and setting up Gavin's apartment, then got the cake and food ready. Guests started arriving, and everyone was excited for Gavin to come. Just before Gavin was supposed to arrive, a middle-aged woman walked to the door. She was dressed in a fancy green evening gown and had a branded handbag. I walked over to her and introduced myself. Hello, I'm Audrey. You must be one of Gavin's close relatives. It's nice to meet you. How do you know Gavin? Oh, finally someone with some manners. I'm Meg, Gavin's mother, and yes, I'm the most important guest here. He's my son, Of course, Meg. I didn't mean to offend you. Gavin talks so fondly about you. Please come in and make yourself comfortable. Well, I should hope so. I practically raised him all by myself. I hope you've done a decent job planning this party. I've put in a lot of effort, and our friends have been a great help too. I hope you enjoy it. We'll see about that. Just make sure you don't get in the way of my time with Gavin. He's my boy after all. Of course, I wouldn't want to come between you two. Gavin cherishes his relationship with you, and I respect that. However, Meg didn't seem impressed by anything I did. She loudly criticized the decorations and even started insulting the other guests at the party. I didn't react to any of Meg's actions and kept being polite, hoping she would eventually like me. Soon, I heard Gavin's car approaching, so I went outside to greet him. The surprise party went well, and Gavin was thrilled with the effort I had put in. We cut the cake and gave him our presents. Meg insisted on being next to Gavin in all the pictures, even the ones with just him and me. She also claimed her gift was the best, and Gavin would love it the most. To my surprise, Gavin didn't stop Meg from making a fuss. Instead, he catered to all her demands, making sure she was always by his side. When it was time for dinner, everyone took their seats at the table. Gavin stood up to make a toast, thanking everyone for coming to his birthday party. He said he had a very important announcement to make and was glad everyone was there to hear it. Before I could react, he got down on one knee, pulled out a ring, and asked me to marry him. I was overjoyed and cried happy tears before excitedly saying yes. Everyone cheered and congratulated us, but I noticed Meg got up and left the table. Confused, I pointed it out to Gavin. Babe, your mom left the table. Is everything okay? We should find her and get her blessing. She'll be upset if we don't. Gavin replied, "But why do we need her blessing? This is our decision, isn't it?" "Babe, you know I always talk to my mom about important decisions. We're really close and I value her opinion." "I get that she's important to you, but isn't this about us? Shouldn't we make decisions together?" "Of course we do, but I can't ignore her. She means a lot to me. Can we just find her and talk to her about giving us her blessing?" I started to feel concerned. No one should be that dependent on their parents, but I let it go because I loved him and wanted his mother to approve of me too. We searched for Meg all over the house but couldn't find her. Eventually, we saw her sitting quietly in the backyard. We approached her and asked for her blessing, which she reluctantly gave after Gavin asked. Gavin apologized, saying, "Mom, I'm sorry I didn't talk to you before proposing to Audrey. It just happened in the moment and I thought it was the perfect time." Meg responded, "Well, Gavin, you usually discuss big decisions with me. I felt left out this time." "I know, and I didn't mean to upset you. I planned to talk to you the next day, but the surprise party changed everything. I understand it was unexpected, but you should have found a way to talk to me before making such a big decision. You're right, Mom. I should have. I got caught up in the excitement, and Audrey has been so amazing and supportive. I wanted to show her how much she means to me." "I can see you really love her, Gavin. I just want you to remember to include me in your life, especially with important matters." "I promise, Mom, I'll work on communicating better with you. You're an important part of my life, and I want you to be part of Audrey's and my journey together. That's all I ask, dear." I decided not to listen to the rest of their conversation because I started feeling like I was eavesdropping, even though I wasn't. As I walked away, I heard Meg telling Gavin that I wasn't good enough for him, that he should reconsider marrying me, and that I wasn't beautiful enough and was only interested in Gavin for his money. I ignored Meg's taunts and pretended I didn't hear them. Over the next few weeks, we started planning our wedding. Meg didn't help with any of the preparations. She tried to dictate which dress I should wear and threw a tantrum when I told her I wanted to choose my own. She also met with me a few times to tell me that I should pay more than half of the wedding expenses, saying I was lucky to be marrying Gavin and needed to contribute. I didn't take these incidents to heart, thinking she would warm up to me once we were married. Finally, after weeks of planning, my wedding day arrived. I was in my dressing room, surrounded by my bridesmaids and my mother, getting ready. Everyone told me how beautiful I looked in my flowing white dress. Then I heard a knock at the door and saw Meg walk in. To my shock, she was wearing a white wedding dress. "Why are you wearing a wedding dress?" I asked. "Today is my son's wedding day, and it's more important to me than anything else," Meg replied. "I chose to wear this dress to highlight my significance as the mother of the groom." "I understand it's an important day for you, but isn't it customary for the bride to wear white? It might take away from Audrey's moment," my mother pointed out. "Well, that's not my concern," Meg said. "Gavin is my only son, and I deserve attention on this occasion too." "Of course, Meg," my mother said, "but today is primarily about Audrey and Gavin's love and commitment. It's their special day." "I know that, but I'm just making a statement. My presence here matters as much as anyone else's," Meg insisted. I was furious but decided not to cause a scene and ruin the day. The rest of the ceremony went well. We exchanged vows and rings, and it was emotional for both of us since we had been waiting for this day for a long time. During the wedding planning, I had asked Gavin to handle the guest list. I noticed he hadn't included his father and asked if he was sure about that decision. Gavin said his father had abandoned them and had no place at such an important celebration. I wanted to change his mind but decided to drop the subject, not wanting to upset him. The months after our wedding were blissful. We spent every moment together and started planning to buy our own house. Gavin and I had always wanted to live together, but decided to get married first before making such a decision. We began house hunting, spending a few hours every day looking for our dream home. One day, Gavin called me at work. "Hey babe, I'm sorry, but an important meeting has come up. I won't be able to go house hunting with you today." "No worries, darling, it happens. Don't stress about it. I can handle it on my own." "Oh, thanks for understanding. I'll make it up to you, I promise." "You better. Just focus on your meeting and we'll catch up later. Love you." "Love you too, babe." After work, I got into my car and drove to the location of the property. I saw that the house was on the 10th floor of a building still under construction, When I arrived, I met with the realtor, who informed me that another guest had arrived under our name to look at the property. Knowing Gavin was busy, I was confused about who this person could be. To my shock, I saw my mother-in-law, Meg, waiting impatiently at the door. I asked her why she had come to see the property. She said she wanted to make sure the house was good enough for her son, and that it had a place for her to stay when she visits. I didn't want Meg involved, but I let her join me to avoid making Gavin angry. We began the tour, and Meg didn't stop criticizing the building and saying the house wasn't up to her standards. By the end of the tour, I was very frustrated and wanted to leave as quickly as possible. The realtor stepped away to take a call and told us he'd show us the rest of the property when he returned. He also warned us to be careful, as the house was still under construction and could be dangerous. I started walking around and noticed an unfinished staircase outside the house. Suddenly, I felt someone kick my right leg. I lost my balance and fell down the stairs. I couldn't move and felt bruises on my arms and head. I looked up to see Meg smiling in victory before she quickly turned and left. I was in shock, unable to understand what had just happened, and I couldn't move for a few minutes. Eventually, I found my phone in my pocket and called an ambulance. As I was taken to the hospital, I couldn't stop thinking about how Meg had tried to push me down the stairs to injure me. I had been nothing but kind to her, and her behavior left me both sad and angry. At the hospital, I underwent first aid and several scans. I tried calling Gavin multiple times, but he didn't pick up. The medication made me drowsy, and I eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I tried calling him again. This time he answered, but his reaction was far from what I expected. Instead of concern, he sounded angry and accused me of lying. "I can't believe you're lying about this, Audrey," Gavin snapped. "You expect me to believe my own mother pushed you down the stairs?" "Gavin, I'm not lying. Meg kicked me and I fell. She deliberately hurt me," I pleaded. "You're just trying to cover up your actions. My mother said you were being aggressive. She would never hurt you for no reason," he retorted. "I can't believe you're taking her word over mine. She's been manipulating you, Gavin," I cried. "Stop it. She would never lie to me. She's my mother. I thought you loved me and trusted me. But now I need to be with her. She's in shock because of what you did," he said coldly. "You're choosing her over me, Gavin? After everything we've been through?" I asked, heartbroken. "You brought this on yourself, Audrey. Maybe you deserve this for what you did," he replied. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I began to cry and ended the call, overwhelmed with grief and disbelief. For the next 2 days, I was in shock. My injuries started to heal, and my parents visited, shocked at Gavin's reaction. My father suggested I look into Gavin's father, suspecting there was more to the story. Taking his advice, I hired a private investigator and contacted Gavin's father, Neil. At first, Neil was confused about who I was, but he soon understood the situation. I divorced Meg and left because she and Gavin were using me for my money. Gavin tried to steal from me by transferring my company into his name, Neil revealed. "Oh my goodness, I had no idea. That's terrible," I exclaimed. "Yes, it was a tough decision, but I couldn't let them take advantage of me any longer." "I want you to know that they're never up to any good," Neil warned. "Thank you, Neil. I believe you and I appreciate your help," I said. "I'm glad you do. I have a plan to handle this situation. I need you to get Gavin and Meg to visit you at the hospital tomorrow morning," Neil explained. "Why do you want them to come here?" I asked, feeling uneasy. "I need to confront them about their actions and protect you from further harm. It's time they face the consequences," Neil said firmly. Despite my fear and reluctance to see either Meg or Gavin, I knew I had to trust Neil if I wanted justice. I called Gavin and told him I had a special gift for him and Meg to apologize. I mentioned it was expensive and that I wanted to make sure they received it. Hearing the word expensive, Gavin and Meg readily agreed to visit the hospital. The next morning, Neil arrived at the hospital with flowers. I thanked him for his help. Just as we finished our conversation, Gavin and Meg walked in. They froze in shock, staring at Neil. "Neil, what's this about? Why are you here?" Gavin demanded. "I couldn't stand by and watch you and Meg manipulate Audrey any longer," Neil replied. "Manipulate? We didn't do anything wrong. She's the one causing trouble," Meg protested. "That's not true. Audrey has been through a lot because of both of you. It's time to end this charade," Neil said. "Dad, you're ruining everything." "Audrey and I love each other," Gavin argued. I divorced your mother because of your actions, Gavin. You tried to take advantage of me and my company. I won't let Audrey face the same thing. These are divorce papers, Gavin, so Audrey can finally be free from your toxic influence, Neil announced. Meg snatched the papers from Gavin and screamed when she saw the $40 million inheritance that was supposed to go to Gavin would now go to me. Both Meg and Gavin's jaws dropped, and they began arguing with Neil before resorting to begging him to change his mind. Neil stood firm, telling them they deserved this for trying to hurt someone innocent like me. He then called hospital security to remove them from the room, and they were dragged out. I had gone through hell, but finally I got my revenge. Afterward, I maintained a good friendship with Neil, grateful for his help in ending the nightmare.